Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're doing something pretty exciting. We're taking a full inventory of the Earth's vast vault of treasures. Honestly, just take a quick second and look around you right now. The screen you're staring at, the electricity powering it, the chair you're sitting in, it all comes straight from this planet. But if we want this global bank account to last for generations to come, we really have to understand the strict rules for making withdrawals. Let's get right into it. To kick things off, I want to start with this incredibly powerful quote from Christiana Figueres. She says, "We must move toward a regenerative economy, an economy that operates in harmony with nature." Take a second to let that sink in. A regenerative economy. It perfectly frames our urgent need to return to nature's innate wisdom as the ultimate recycler, and it really sets the stage for everything we're going to cover today. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be hitting what defines a resource, renewable versus non-renewable, our finite fossil fuels, the paradox of plenty, the power of renewables, and finally, stewardship for the future. Let's dive in. Section 1. What defines a resource? Before we go categorizing or classifying anything, we need to answer a really fundamental question. When does a piece of nature actually become a resource for us to use? Well, it turns out a piece of nature only becomes a resource if it checks three very specific boxes. First, it has to be technologically accessible, meaning do we actually have the physical tools and engineering to reach it? Second, it's got to be economically feasible. I mean, if it costs $10 million to dig up $5 million worth of raw minerals, that's just a non-starter, right? And third, it must be culturally acceptable for society to actually use it. Only when all three of these things align does a piece of nature officially become a resource. Section 2. Renewable versus non-renewable. So once those three criteria are met, we divide these natural resources into two main categories, largely based on exactly how they replenish themselves over time. Our basic taxonomy splits the world by its origins. We've got biotic resources, so living organisms. Think expansive forests, rowing animals, and deep-sea fisheries. And then we have abiotic resources, representing the non-living components, like the air we breathe, water, and raw minerals. But crucially, the absolute most important classification we'll use moving forward is renewable. Are these resources naturally replenishing themselves, or do they exist in strictly finite, limited quantities? To really picture this distinction, I like to think of renewables as a boundless, all-you-can-eat buffet that just never runs out. As long as the Earth is here, the sun's going to shine, rivers will flow, and the wind will blow. Non-renewables, on the other hand, they're like a finite snack supply in a jar. Once we consume that coal, oil, or natural gas to power our lives, the jar is empty. It is literally never going to be restocked in our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes. And the impact of choosing one side over the other is absolutely massive. Non-renewables carry this heavy hidden price tag, toxic emissions, severe habitat destruction, and constantly rising extraction costs as they get harder and harder to find. Renewables, though, are incredibly efficient. They adapt to the environment, generate power with virtually zero emissions, and are just infinitely better for the planet's long-term health and stability. Section 3. Our finite fossil fuels. Let's talk about that finite snack supply. We're going to look at exactly how these highly demanded, energy-dense fuels came to be in the first place and why that jar is running completely empty. Just consider the deep time journey of coal, petroleum, and natural gas. The scale is mind-blowing. Starting over 300 million years ago in the ancient swampy wetlands of the Carboniferous period, organic matter like plants and algae died and sank into the muck. Fast forward to 100 million years ago, and those organisms are getting crushed under the shifting seabed. It literally took hundreds of millions of years of intense subterranean heat and pressure to slowly cook up the exact fuels we're burning through so rapidly today in the 21st century. But relying on this ancient energy comes with a massive cost. When we combust these fuels, we rip carbon that's been safely sequestered underground for millions of years and pump it straight into the atmosphere. This sudden release throws the Earth's delicate carbon budget completely out of whack. It acts like this thick and visible blanket that fuels the greenhouse effect, trapping heat and fundamentally altering our global climate. Section 4. The paradox of plenty, also known as the resource curse. Now, you might logically think that sitting on a massive reserve of these finite fuels guarantees national wealth and prosperity, right? Well, that brings us to a really fascinating economic twist. It's a highly counterintuitive concept. Abundant natural resources can actually curse a country's overall economy. Historically, the data shows that regions incredibly rich in raw, extractable materials often end up experiencing much slower economic growth compared to resource-poor countries. It's a paradox that has totally baffled economists and challenged nations for decades. So why does this happen? Well, economies become overly dependent on simply exporting those raw materials. They don't bother building up the complex industries needed to convert those materials into higher value manufactured goods. Throw in some mismanaged revenues, and suddenly all the other vital sectors of the economy, like agriculture or technology, are entirely neglected. Economists actually call this damaging phenomenon Dutch disease. Section 5. The power of renewables. To avoid this economic curse, and to protect our fragile carbon budget, we absolutely have to pivot our focus back to that boundless buffet. This is where the tech gets so exciting. These incredible technologies allow us to harness the planet's energy without permanently destroying the source. Think about it, harnessing the sun's ambient radiation with advanced photovoltaic cells, capturing the kinetic energy of the wind with massive turbines, utilizing flowing rivers for hydropower, or even tapping into the Earth's deep core heat for geothermal energy. We can also use organic biomass. This is exactly how we can power our modern lives completely sustainably. And you know what? The world is finally taking notice. A monumental shift happened back in 2015 when India and France officially launched the International Solar Alliance. That single year marked a massive, coordinated, global commitment to this energy transition. It signaled loud and clear that nations across the globe are ready to invest heavily in the infrastructure of tomorrow, leaving that finite snack jar behind. Section 6. Stewardship for the future. Transitioning to renewables is really only half the battle. The rest comes down to how we manage the physical resources we already interact with every single day. We have to learn from past mistakes. The Punjab groundwater crisis is a perfect cautionary tale. It shows how aggressively chasing short-term food security, like the quick, massive agricultural gains from the Green Revolution, without any sustainable water management, directly leads to a severe, long-term ecological depletion crisis. It's a stark reminder that we just can't cheat nature's limits. But thankfully, there is a much more positive narrative to follow. Look at Sikkim. Instead of degrading their land for immediate yields, Sikkim embraced ancient sustainable wisdom and strictly regulated their agricultural practices. And it worked beautifully. In 2016, they successfully became India's first fully organic state. They modeled exactly what true environmental stewardship looks like in practice, proving we can work with nature instead of against it. So we need to implement these practical strategies on a much wider scale. First, this means aggressive afforestation and reforestation to rebuild lost habitats. Second, it means highly efficient, scientifically backed mining to minimize waste. It also requires us to fiercely recycle our metals and electronic waste. Ultimately, we have to transition fully into circular economies, where absolutely nothing is wasted and materials are reused indefinitely. As we wrap up this explainer, I'll leave you with a crucial question to ponder about our shared responsibility. Will we be the generation that finally balances Earth's carbon budget, or the one that bankrupts it completely? Honestly, it all comes down to the daily choices we make and the environmental legacy we choose to leave behind. Thank you so much for joining me today, and keep exploring.